Can you imagine fighting over who gets to sweep up the kitchen floor? Well, I can't. But the Mishnah in Yoma 22a records how in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, there was a practice, a mitzvah actually, to sweep up the ashes from the altar, from the Mizbeach, called Trumat Hadeshan, among the Kohanim. And historically, there was a competition for who gets to perform this responsibility. They would actually compete to get this prize called sweeping up the ashes from the Mizbeach. So this kept up until there was an incident, the Mishnah says, in which one of the Kohanim was actually pushed off the altar and got really hurt, got injured, which is pretty terrible. And because of that incident, the Mishnah says that practice of having this competition of racing up to the altar was banned, and a lottery was conducted instead to determine which Kohen would be the lucky guy to sweep up the ashes. Now, you'd think that was bad enough for a Kohen to have been pushed off and hurt, but the Gemara actually has a story to top that, and the Gemara tells the story of how in these times pre-lottery, when there was a competition for the Tumat Hadeshen, there was an incident in which one Kohen actually stabbed another fatally in his rush to get to the altar first. And the father of the victim rushes to his son, and of course you would think, oh my God, he must be horrified. And yet instead of crying out in distress over the loss of his son, he is instead relieved that his son is still breathing. He is going to die soon. He is still breathing, and the knife that is stuck in him that was used to stab him is, what a relief, not ritually impure. Sidebar, any vessel that comes into contact with a dead body becomes ritually impure, and it's really problematic in the context of the temple. Now, it's problematic, but in the context of compared to human life, it is, of course, not as valuable as human life itself. And of course, this horrible story is so tragic because it's indicative of how corrupt the Kohanim were during a certain temple era. And unfortunately, it's an example of how corrupt what happens when religion is corrupted to be exactly what it's not meant to be. I would like to think of this story as a reminder how even on a much smaller scale we can easily lose touch with our deepest values, what really should matter most. While we may not be engaged in such an egregious story as valuing ritual purity over the life of a human being, I think that there are many times in which we go through our lives on a daily basis and sometimes catch ourselves and wonder how we may be a little bit off base when it comes to the choices we make and how well they align with what really, really matters to us, what actually matters. And Masechet Yoma is mainly about Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which is a day of reflection and of asking ourselves just that. What are our deepest values? What do we value most when push comes to shove? And it's a time for us to recalibrate and realign our life choices with those values. And I think that's the intention behind the Inuim, the ways in which we deprive ourselves of our physical comforts on Yom Kippur. We abstain from eating, drinking, showering, strip away those layers of comfort and come to grips with, at the core, who are we and what do we stand for? It's not only Yom Kippur that's a time of reflection. In fact, there's a practice on the eve of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the new Jewish month, to have a Yom Kippur Katan, a small Yom Kippur, a day set aside for reflection. Historically, some people used to fast. I don't personally feel that that's necessary on a monthly basis. But there are practices, not just on Yom Kippur, but on a monthly basis to reflect, and even on a nightly basis to reflect before going to bed. There are some Jewish practices, particularly in the Sephardic tradition, of saying a vidui, of taking a moment before we go to sleep and think about our choices throughout the day. So let's take advantage of those opportunities, not only on Yom Kippur, not only on Erev Rosh Chodesh on a monthly basis, but even on a daily basis, to check in with ourselves and ask ourselves what really matters to us, and how do our lives, our life choices, our daily choices align with those values.